A tragic mix-up at a prestigious hospital in San Rafael City led to an unexpected pregnancy for Liana Cruz, a bright and innocent college student. The mistake began when a doctor, in a rush and unaware of a file swap, mistakenly injected a sperm sample into Liana's uterus, an insemination intended for a surrogate mother. The owner of the sperm was none other than Sebastian Delgado, the wealthiest and most admired man in the area, CEO of Delgado Brews, a massive beer conglomerate. Sebastian had battled cancer during the height of his career. With both of his parents gone, the responsibility of continuing the Delgado family line weighed heavily on him. Before undergoing surgery, he deposited a potent sperm sample, his only chance of ever fathering a child. Miraculously, his operation was a success, and he fully recovered. Ready to begin a new chapter, Sebastian planned to marry his girlfriend of 3 years, Isabel Soriano, a dazzling supermodel whose heart belonged more to the spotlight than to motherhood. Despite Sebastian's deep longing to have a child, Isabel refused to carry one, fearing the physical toll and career disruption. So in desperation, Sebastian arranged for a surrogate. That same day, at St. Agnes Medical Center, Liana happened to arrive for a routine checkup. Due to a collision between 2 nurses and a mix-up of patient files, she was mistakenly taken to the artificial insemination wing. In a hurry to get to another surgery, the doctor inseminated her without confirming her identity. Only when the real surrogate asked about the post-op precautions did the nurse realize the error, but by then, it was too late. The hospital, fearing a scandal, decided to cover up the mistake. They deleted Liana's file and quietly injected a random sperm donor into the actual surrogate. Later, the doctor called Sebastian and announced that the surrogate was successfully impregnated. Overjoyed, Sebastian hugged Isabel, excited to become a father in 9 months. But Isabel could barely force a smile. Unnerved and unsure, she later confided in her best friend Carla, admitting her fear that this child, who had no blood relation to her, could ruin her marriage. Carla advised her to take it as a win. She wouldn't have to endure pregnancy, and her career could continue unscathed. Unbeknownst to them, however, Sebastian's true biological child was growing in Liana's womb. A few weeks later, Liana returned to the hospital to collect her report. To her shock, a nurse congratulated her on her pregnancy. Confused and alarmed, Liana insisted it had to be a mistake after all. She was still a virgin. She asked the hospital to double-check the results and left. But not long after boarding a bus home, she received another call. The tests were accurate. She was undeniably pregnant. Thoughts of her recent nausea and fatigue hit her all at once. Panicked, she rushed off the bus and into a nearby pharmacy. She bought a pregnancy test and, needing privacy, went to the restroom of the nearest building, a branch office of Delgado Brews. As the 2 red lines appeared on the stick, Liana's world crumbled. At the same time, Sebastian received a devastating call. The surrogate had suffered abdominal pain and lost the baby. Grieving, he left his office to clear his head, heartbroken at the thought that he'd never be a father. Elsewhere, in a state of anguish, Liana climbed to the rooftop of a tall building, torn by fear, shame, and confusion. Just as she stepped toward the edge, a man sprinted to her side and pulled her back. It was Sebastian, unaware he had just saved the mother of his child. Liana, shocked, lashed out at him for interfering. Seeing her pale and trembling, Sebastian gently wrapped her in his arms, offering warmth and comfort. For a brief moment, she felt safe, but when he pulled away, embarrassed, she quietly thanked him and left. Back home, her best friend Daniela, who worked at Delgado Brews, woke her up. That night was the company's grand anniversary celebration, and Daniela asked Liana, a talented photographer, to take some promotional shots for the event. Though hesitant, Liana finally agreed. As she rode her scooter to the event that evening, her brakes suddenly failed. She screamed in fear, unable to stop. In that moment of panic, Sebastian leapt forward and caught her just in time, only to realize she was the same girl from the rooftop the day before. Liana felt her face flush with embarrassment as the security guards closed in on her, questioning why she had suddenly arrived at the party. She quickly explained that she was the photographer hired for the celebration. Despite her explanation, the guards remained skeptical, and their suspicion only made Liana more uneasy. Fearing that the Babae confrontation would further upset her, Sebastian stepped in, calming the situation. He instructed one of the guards to have Liana's damaged scooter taken for repairs, then gently guided her into the grand ballroom. Determined to put the incident behind her, Liana focused on her work, throwing herself into the rhythm of photography. Among the guests was Diego, a marketing executive at Delgado Brews, who was instantly taken by her. Curious, he asked her colleagues about her, then worked up the courage to approach and start a conversation. Through their brief exchange, Liana finally learned who Sebastian truly was, the powerful CEO of the largest brewery in San Rafael, a man revered in both business and social circles. He carried a ruthless reputation in the boardroom, but was known to be gentlemanly and kind in private life. Standing beside him at the party was his wife, Isabel, the elegant and captivating supermodel. They looked picture-perfect, so graceful and connected that Liana suddenly felt a strange emptiness gnawing at her. Seeking a moment of solitude, she slipped upstairs to a storage room to change her camera's memory card. Just then, a loud gunshot shattered the silence, making her flinch. Alarmed, she crept toward the door and noticed something chilling, a trail of blood leading away, hastily cleaned but unmistakably real. Unbeknownst to her, the shooter was Rilo Soriano, Isabel's father. Ever since Isabel began dating Sebastian, Rilo and his son had been given senior roles in Delgado Brews, but ambition had twisted them. They had been secretly buying company shares to stage a takeover. When Francisco, Sebastian's best friend, discovered the plot, he tried to alert him. But Rilo intercepted the conversation and lured Francisco to the garden under false pretenses. During a heated confrontation, the gun went off accidentally, but fatally. Panicked, Liana ran back to the ballroom and grabbed the first person she saw, Sebastian. She dragged him to the scene, only to find the blood wiped clean. Her explanation sounded erratic, and to Sebastian, everything appeared normal. As Liana started to doubt her own instincts, she spotted broken pieces of a vase, clear evidence that a struggle had occurred. But Sebastian, preoccupied with his guests, had no patience for what he thought was a fabricated story. Dismissing her with a cold tone, he accused her of breaking the vase and lying, then told her that her job was over. Furious and heartbroken, Liana stormed out, her once growing admiration for Sebastian now fully crushed. That night, Daniela brought her home and listened as Liana finally broke down. She confessed her pregnancy and her confusion, but neither of them could understand how it was even possible. Daniela urged her to tell her family and seek their help. The next morning, Liana gathered her grandmother, mother, and uncle, trembling with nerves. She declared that she was pregnant, but insisted she had never been intimate with a man. Her family reacted with disbelief, her claim sounding more like fantasy than truth. Their response quickly unraveled into despair. Liana's grandmother, abandoned by her husband years ago, had lived through her own heartbreak. Her mother, impulsive and romantic, had given birth to Liana at 16, without ever knowing who the father was. Now 36, she was still immature and, to make matters worse, romantically involved with a married man. When the man's daughters caught them, they publicly humiliated her, and the neighbors began to scorn her. The man's wife later called to berate her, demanding she end the affair. As for Liana's uncle, he too had suffered abandonment and was now a single father. Liana had grown up watching this generational spiral and vowed never to walk the same path. She had been determined to stay pure until marriage, no matter how much ridicule she endured for being old-fashioned. To her family, she was their only hope, the girl who got into college, the one who would break the cycle. Now, hearing her say she was a pregnant virgin felt like betrayal. They saw it as proof that they were cursed. Overwhelmed by their disbelief and criticism, Liana packed her things and quietly ran away. She turned to Daniela, begging for a place to stay. Though Daniela wanted to take her home, Liana knew her family would look for her there. She didn't want confrontation, only time to breathe and think. With no other choice, Daniela smuggled her into her office after hours and let her rest there. Meanwhile, Sebastian was drowning in his own kind of grief. Since learning that his final sperm sample had been lost and that he would never become a father, he had spiraled into despair. He felt as if he had failed his family. His father had taught him that their legacy depended on him, on continuing both the bloodline and the business. Now he had let them down. When he needed comfort most, Isabel dismissed his pain, saying he was grieving nothing more than a cell. Crushed, Sebastian finally told her the truth. If she couldn't share his dreams, they should divorce. That night, Isabel waited for him in a silk nightgown, drenched in perfume, but instead of her husband, it was the housekeeper who entered and informed her that Sebastian had moved into the second bedroom. Reality struck. He truly wanted out. The next day, Isabel confided in Camila, her best friend. She admitted she never wanted children and had only agreed to surrogacy to please Sebastian. Now that the baby was gone, she was relieved. Her modeling career was just taking off, and without his status and wealth, she would be lost in the crowd. Camila, however, comforted her, reminding her that as long as she didn't sign divorce papers, she still had access to his power and resources. Back at Delgado Bruise, Sebastian noticed Liana's repaired scooter parked nearby. Memories of her, at the rooftop, the party, the accident flooded his mind. A strange warmth returned to his chest. Feeling lighter, he returned to the office to catch up on work. But to his surprise, he stumbled upon Liana, sneaking through the halls. Alarmed, he assumed the company had been broken into and started to dial the police. That's when Liana rushed forward and stopped him, breathlessly explaining that it was a misunderstanding. To calm him, she confessed everything: her pregnancy, her fight with her family, and her desperate need for somewhere safe. Sebastian was moved. Knowing how much he valued children, he couldn't ignore her pain. He offered to let her stay at the company for the night, and even gave her a quiet tour to help her settle in. Later, the two of them ended up in the kitchen, cooking together in unexpected camaraderie. Somewhere in the gentle silence, Sebastian admitted he had cancer in the past and was now infertile. Liana, in turn, revealed that she was carrying a child but didn't even know who the father was. The pregnancy had wrecked her family's trust and threatened her future. She had worked for 2 years to afford college, and now it could all disappear. As her voice cracked, Liana stood up, trying to walk away and salvage her dignity. But Sebastian followed her, gently handing her a piece of chocolate as a small, silly peace offering. To his relief, she laughed, tears shimmering in her eyes, but a smile blooming through the sorrow. In the quiet stillness of the night, two near strangers, Sebastian and Liana, had unknowingly exchanged the deepest secrets of their lives. Neither was aware that the exact same circumstance had upended both their worlds. Sebastian, a married CEO, found himself strangely drawn to the girl sleeping under his roof, her face calm, innocent, and sweet. As he watched Liana doze off peacefully, the weight of his sorrows seemed to lift, but it wasn't a one-sided pull. The next morning, Liana gazed dreamily at the man who had offered her safety and warmth, completely smitten. Still groggy, Sebastian found himself unable to let her go. He asked her to stay, even grabbing her luggage to stop her from leaving. If she needed to hide from her family, he told her, she could continue living at his company. Touched by his kindness, Liana accepted, still unaware that the baby growing inside her was in fact their child. With renewed energy, Liana returned to her university, only to be intercepted by her mother, Jenny. To her surprise, Jenny apologized for accusing her so harshly. With some of the tension eased, Liana finally revealed her suspicions that her pregnancy may have resulted from something the doctor did during her checkup. The dates matched too perfectly. Alarmed, Jenny immediately dragged her back to St. Agnes Medical Center. Upon seeing them, the nurse who had made the file mix-up panicked and tried to flee, but the hospital's ground floor exit was locked. Cornered, the nurse confessed she had indeed committed medical malpractice by switching Liana's file with that of the surrogate mother. As a result, the sperm meant for the surrogate had been mistakenly injected into Liana's uterus. Shocked and devastated, Liana and Jenny listened as the nurse showed no real remorse. Instead, she tried to convince Liana to carry the child to term, arguing that the sperm donor was infertile and had paid a large sum to ensure the baby would be born. This would be the only child he could ever have. Jenny was furious. How could her daughter, a virgin who had never even been in love, give birth to a stranger's child for money? Liana, still reeling, asked for the identity of the sperm donor, but the nurse refused, citing hospital confidentiality. All she would say was that he was a wealthy, powerful man. Jenny threatened to call the police, but Liana begged her not to. She didn't want a scandal or attention. Later that night, she locked herself in her room and cried. Her education, her goals, everything she'd worked so hard for seemed shattered. As she was mourning, her best friend Daniela called to ask her for the photos she had taken at Delgado Brew's anniversary party. Trying to pull herself together, Liana went to Sebastian's office to deliver them. Immediately he noticed her. Red, puffy eyes, and asked what was wrong. She couldn't bring herself to explain, but Sebastian, sensing her gloom, impulsively pulled her outside, leaving behind his limousine and security. Instead, he hopped on her scooter, stretching his long legs across the seat, and the two rode off like carefree teens. They didn't realize several employees witnessed the moment, including Camila, Sebastian's late best friend's wife. Sebastian took Liana to a cafe perched on a hill. Watching her, he asked gently if she was worried about the baby. Liana didn't reveal the truth about the mistaken insemination. Instead, she simply said the baby's father didn't know about the pregnancy, and she didn't plan to tell him. This unsettled Sebastian deeply. Having always yearned to be a father, he insisted that the man deserved to know. But Liana, overwhelmed and unwilling to get into a fight, steered the conversation elsewhere. To lighten the mood, she demonstrated a playful trick, shaking the Coke can and gently tapping the top before opening it to prevent a mess. The moment broke their shared heaviness, and both began to laugh. In that laughter, something deeper began to form between them, something like trust. Later that day, Sebastian returned home to face his increasingly jealous wife. Isabel accused him of bringing another woman into their house. Sebastian explained calmly that Liana was just a friend, but Isabel wasn't convinced. She didn't believe a man and woman could ever be just friends. She pleaded with him to sleep in her room that night, but Sebastian refused. The grief of knowing he might never have a biological child weighed on him too heavily. Back at the hospital, chaos erupted. The nurse confessed her fears to the doctor who had inseminated Liana. If Liana reported them, both could end up in prison. The doctor wanted to tell the hospital supervisor, but the nurse, terrified of legal responsibility, fled. The truth was even worse. The supervisor himself had originally been in charge of the procedure, but had handed it off due to a scheduling conflict. Now no one knew who had received Sebastian's sample because Liana's records had been deleted. After much debate, the supervisor made a decision. Tell Sebastian everything. He reasoned that if Sebastian knew, he would move heaven and earth to find the pregnant girl. That evening, the supervisor visited Sebastian's home and revealed the truth. Sebastian was stunned. This was his only chance. His only biological child might still exist. He promised that, no matter what, he would respect the girl's wishes if she agreed to give birth. But the supervisor warned that she was impregnated against her will and could choose to terminate the pregnancy at any time. Determined not to lose this final chance at fatherhood, Sebastian hired the best private investigator money could buy, just as the search began. However, the police arrived at Sebastian's door. They informed him that his best friend, Francisco, had disappeared shortly after attending the anniversary celebration. Now, Sebastian was under investigation. His search for the pregnant girl had to be paused. During the investigation, the police searched his home, eventually making their way to the garden where Liana had once claimed to hear a gunshot and see blood. They called her in to cooperate. Though Liana admitted she heard something and saw a trail, she never saw a body or a killer. Still, as she had been photographing the event that night, the detective requested all her photos and the memory card. She agreed, but the card was missing. Her grandmother had found it while cleaning and unknowingly misplaced it. Now the crucial evidence was lost. After her interview, Sebastian gave Liana a private tour of the house, sharing his dreams of raising children there one day. Their closeness was secretly recorded by Camila, who now lived in the home since her husband Francisco had vanished. As she snooped around, a sudden ring startled her. It was Francisco's phone. Wedged in a crack in the couch in Sebastian's study, she picked it up, but no one responded. The call had come from Rilo, Isabel's father, the true killer trying to frame Sebastian. Sebastian had no idea the phone was even there. As suspicions grew, Camila called Isabel to tell her Liana was again at the house. Instead of going home, Isabel chose to continue her magazine photo shoot. Later, Camila confronted Liana coldly, warning her to stay away from Sebastian, that no self-respecting woman would interfere with a married man. Mortified, Liana was ready to leave, but Sebastian stopped her. He explained that his problems with Isabel had nothing to do with her and that she shouldn't feel guilty. Then, showing care and warmth, he asked about her health and the baby, even though she still didn't reveal the child was his. Respecting her silence, Sebastian only offered her a hug, one that like always made her feel just a little stronger. Soon after, the detective left the house, having found no hard evidence. Just then, Isabel burst in, furious and loud, accusing Sebastian of bringing his mistress home. The detective clarified that it was he who had summoned Liana. Shamed in front of everyone, Sebastian lashed out, calling Isabel crazy. Camila, ever manipulative, advised Isabel to calm down if she truly wanted to salvage the marriage. That's when Isabel remembered the adoption. The next day, Isabel returned to the orphanage and lied to the priest, claiming that Sebastian had agreed to adopt. She offered to bring a child home to see if they bonded before completing the paperwork. Not wanting the burden of a baby, she chose a 10-year-old boy, someone old enough to impress her husband, but easy to manage. All of it was a show, a desperate, last-ditch attempt to win back the man she was slowly losing. Sebastian saw through Isabel's ulterior motives. He didn't want to hurt the innocent boy caught in her manipulations, so he swallowed his anger and allowed her to take the child home to play. But he was growing more and more disillusioned. Isabel had no real concern for the child's safety or well-being. Sebastian warned her coldly to stop using the boy as a prop, telling her he deserved better parents, not to be used in this farce. Unable to stand the sight of her any longer, Sebastian left the house and drove to St. Agnes Medical Center in a fury. He demanded answers from the hospital supervisor, desperate to find out if the pregnant girl had been located. But no one gave him a straight answer. Frustrated and low-spirited, Sebastian called Danilo, the marketing director of Delgado Brews, and invited him for a drink. He poured out everything that had been eating away at him, how he and Isabel had completely different values, how his love for her had slowly drained away. Meanwhile, Liana visited her best friend Diana's house and confessed her feelings for Sebastian. Diana was alarmed and urged her to come to her senses. After all, Sebastian was a married man and her situation was already complicated enough. Liana tearfully admitted she would try to suppress her feelings, but it was Sebastian's kindness and understanding that had given her the courage to keep the baby in her womb. But Liana's decision to carry the pregnancy to term wasn't welcomed by her family. Her grandmother begged her not to be impulsive. She hadn't even graduated from university, had never been in a relationship, and had a whole future ahead of her. Why tie herself down to a child now? But Liana remained firm. Her grandmother had raised both her mother and uncle alone, and her mother had raised her single-handedly. Why shouldn't she be able to do the same? Women, she said, could support each other through anything. Moved by her determination, her family stopped opposing her decision and instead rallied behind her. They worked hard to save money for the baby's future. Liana, however, didn't want to keep depending on them. She asked Diana to help her find a job. Danilo, who secretly harbored feelings for her, found out and, recognizing Liana's artistic talent, invited her to apply for a position at Delgado Brews. Liana hesitated. Danilo and Diana both worked under Sebastian. She didn't want to get more entangled with him. But watching her elderly grandmother bake pastries day and night, and her unreliable mother hustle for part-time jobs, her heart softened. She accepted the offer and interviewed at the company. With her skills, she was hired as a graphic designer. Sebastian was delighted and congratulated her warmly. The head of public relations, Sila, quickly ran to Isabel and exaggerated the situation, claiming that Sebastian had personally brought Liana into the company to spend more time with her. Consumed by jealousy, Isabel feared Liana might truly steal her husband. She hired a private investigator to dig into Liana's background and address. Liana remained blissfully unaware, still on a high from landing her dream job. She threw herself into work, eager to prove herself. But the office was already buzzing with rumors that she had spent a night with Sebastian. Danilo couldn't hold back. He asked her directly if she had a special relationship with him. Liana sensed the hostility and realized her quiet longing to see Sebastian every day was now laid bare. Embarrassed and ashamed, she packed up her things and prepared to resign. Just as she was about to leave, Sebastian received shocking news. Due to a hospital mistake, his sperm had been mistakenly injected into an unknown woman during artificial insemination. When he saw the pregnant girl's face on the hospital monitor, he was stunned. It was Liana. Ecstatic, he rushed back to the office, only to learn she was quitting. Sebastian pulled her aside gently and asked her why. Liana admitted that gossip about their affair had become unbearable. She confessed her feelings for him, but said it broke her heart because he was married. Sebastian was speechless. The woman carrying his child was in love with him. But Liana had made it clear before, she didn't want to find the father of her child. He feared losing her if he told her the truth. Instead, he deflected, blaming her emotional turmoil on her pregnancy. Hurt and embarrassed, Liana stormed out. Overwhelmed, Sebastian went to his uncle for advice. He admitted that whenever he was with Liana, he felt peace, that he didn't have to pretend to be strong. His uncle told him those feelings went beyond friendship. Suddenly, HR informed him that Liana had officially resigned. Panicked, Sebastian rushed to her home, but Isabel had beaten him to it. Disgusted by Liana's humble neighborhood, Isabel arrived haughtily, pretending to be a colleague. Liana's grandmother welcomed her inside, not suspecting her true intent. When Liana appeared, Isabel accused her of being a gold digger and home wrecker. Liana, humiliated, tried to explain she never intended to come between anyone. As Isabel left, Sebastian arrived and confronted her. She scoffed, insisting that if she hadn't stepped in, he would have made a fool of her. Sebastian dismissed her paranoia. After she left, he apologized to Liana. Not wanting her family to overhear, Liana took him to the rooftop. There, Sebastian confessed that Liana was special to him. Though he was a married man and she was carrying a child, he couldn't help how he felt. He said the baby had connected them in a way he couldn't ignore. He asked to care for her as a friend. Liana was moved. She let him place a hand on her belly to feel the baby's kick. Sebastian's heart melted. He asked her to return to work and not give up on her dreams. He promised to keep a respectful distance. After much thought, Liana agreed. Back home, Sebastian told Isabel he wanted a divorce. They no longer had the same goals. It was time to part ways. Isabel felt guilty. She had been secretly meeting her ex, trying to fill the void Sebastian left. But she couldn't bear to lose the wealth and fame he brought her, so she refused to divorce. Things worsened when Isabel discovered her father, Rilo, having an affair with her best friend Carmela. Furious, she kicked Carmela out. But Carmela, whose rich husband had disappeared, was desperate. When Rilo extended a helping hand, Carmela reluctantly accepted his offer in exchange for stability. Soon after, Carmela stumbled upon a magazine cover featuring a miracle pregnancy. It didn't take long for her to put the pieces together. Liana was the woman pregnant with Sebastian's child. She confronted Sebastian, who begged her to keep it a secret. Camila, always scheming, saw an opportunity. Though he warned her to back off, Carmela planted the magazine in the company break room. Rumors exploded. Liana, overwhelmed, was devastated. And it was just the beginning. The next morning, as Sebastian gazed at Liana's sleeping face, a flood of remorse and gratitude welled up within him. When Liana woke up, he pushed aside all his worries and gently led her to the back of the mountain. There, he pulled out a ring he had prepared long ago, got down on one knee, and proposed to her. Caught off guard yet overjoyed, Liana immediately said yes. The two retreated into the remote mountains, believing they had finally found their private paradise. But that utopia was short-lived. That evening, the TV blared breaking news. Isabel publicly accused Sebastian of being an abuser, claiming that not only had he killed his best friend, but also forced her to have a child and undergo artificial insemination. What shattered Sebastian most was Isabel's additional accusation that Liana was his accomplice, and together they had murdered his friend. Though he was reluctant to leave Liana and their unborn son, Sebastian knew that if he didn't confront the issue, they would be forced to live in hiding, always in danger. Determined to protect them, he resolved to return the next day and cooperate with the authorities. He begged Liana to stay strong and take care of herself and their child. Early the following morning, Sebastian called the detective for help. Coincidentally, Liana's mother Jenny had developed feelings for the detective and had also come to see him. The detective informed Sebastian that all evidence currently pointed to him, and until he could prove his innocence, he would have to remain in custody. Liana was heartbroken and urged Sebastian to take care of himself. He reassured her, promising to return once he cleared his name. After making the necessary arrangements, Sebastian left with the detective and surrendered to the police. The sheriff wasted no time locking him up and denied bail. Meanwhile, Liana went back home to her family. Isabel paid a visit to Sebastian in jail, proposing that if he gave up on Liana and returned to her, she would get him released. Sebastian, disgusted by her audacity, yanked her by the ponytail and sent her away in a fury. Isabel swallowed the insult and stormed off. While separated from the woman he loved, Sebastian actively cooperated with the investigation. Meanwhile, Liana's belly grew rounder with each passing day. 4 months later, during lunch, her water suddenly broke. Her family rushed her to the hospital, and after a difficult labor, she gave birth to a baby boy. But neither Isabel nor Rilo was pleased. After all, this child was Sebastian's biological son. Rilo, who had gone to great lengths to have Sebastian jailed and take over his position as company president, couldn't allow the boy to jeopardize his success. One night, while Liana slept, Rilo and Isabel sneaked into the hospital ward to steal the baby. But the infant's cries woke Liana, who, still drowsy and weak, pleaded incoherently with them not to hurt her child. Rilo coldly handed her a massive check and told her to leave the country with the child and never return. Before Liana could decide what to do, Jenny arrived just in time. She screamed for the nurse and dialed the police. Fearing exposure, Rilo ordered Isabel to hand the baby back. Liana tore up the check and warned them never to show their faces again. Elsewhere, the detective visited Francisco's mother and revealed his suspicions that Rilo had murdered her son and sabotaged Delgado Bruce. Furious and convinced of Rilo's guilt, she refused to sell her company shares to him, vowing instead to hand them to Sebastian. That decision would strip Rilo of majority control over the company. Fearing this, Rilo bribed a criminal to assassinate Sebastian in jail. But thanks to Sebastian's sharp instincts, he narrowly survived the attack. The would-be killer was arrested and transferred for questioning. 3 months later, Sebastian was temporarily released due to good behavior. He rushed to the church, dressed in a neat suit, where his son's baptism was taking place. Sebastian beamed as he embraced Liana and gently cradled his son. All the suffering seemed to fade in that tender moment. In front of the priest, he gave the child his father's name, both a tribute and a vow of love. But just 3 seconds after the baptism, the detective arrived to take Sebastian back into custody. Liana clung to him, unwilling to let go. Sebastian urged her to be patient. His court hearing was approaching, and his lawyer had gathered enough evidence to defend him. He promised to return soon. Rilo, cunning and desperate, couldn't let the case go to trial unchallenged. Before the court date, he bribed multiple employees to testify that they had witnessed Sebastian and Francisco arguing violently on the day of the murder. Without any direct evidence to prove otherwise, Sebastian's case began to fall apart. The judge adjourned the hearing, scheduling a second trial the following day. Meanwhile, Rilo's son Manuel, disillusioned by his father's greed and crimes, decided to side with justice. He teamed up with Sebastian's allies and Carmela to uncover evidence of Rilo's embezzlement and criminal activities. Unfortunately, Rilo caught Manuel and punished him severely. Camila, still determined to protect the man she loved, visited her brother in jail and begged him to protect Sebastian. Loyal to his sister, the brother made sure that every time Sebastian was targeted by inmates, he was protected. Rilo's informants within the prison exposed this alliance, and in a fit of jealous rage, Rilo imprisoned both Camila and his own son. He planned to use them as leverage, further sinking into madness. Meanwhile, Liana, desperate to help Sebastian, suddenly remembered hearing a gunshot the night Francisco was killed in Sebastian's backyard. She had panicked and snapped a few photos, though she never checked them. Frantically searching her home, she finally found the memory card. 2 photos remained, one showing bloodstains, the other blurry but possibly critical. She handed them to the detective, who rushed them to a digital expert for enhancement. On the second day of trial, Liana appeared as a witness and recounted everything she remembered. But the defense lawyer pounced, attacking her credibility for having a child out of wedlock and casting doubt on her testimony. Unable to watch Liana be humiliated, Sebastian tried to stop the hearing, but the judge ordered him to stay seated. Then the detective burst into the courtroom with the enhanced photo. It clearly showed Rilo dragging Francisco's corpse. Sebastian was exonerated at last. Overwhelmed, he embraced Liana in front of everyone. The sheriff immediately phoned Rilo, warning him that the murder evidence had been revealed and advising him to run. Hiding in the shadows, Isabel realized the gravity of her father's crimes. She begged him to surrender and release her brother and Camila. But Rilo, unhinged, tied up his own daughter and used the 3 of them as human shields in a standoff with the police. During the chaos, Camila managed to grab Rilo's gun and aimed it at him, allowing Manuel and Isabel to move toward the police. As Camila turned to follow, Rilo overpowered her and shot her. The police moved in and arrested him. In prison, Rilo was confronted by Camila's brother, his past catching up with him. Meanwhile, Isabel was arrested for hiring someone to assassinate Liana. 3 years later, Sebastian's company had flourished. Liana, once a fragile young woman, had not only become the mother of his child, but also his lucky star. She returned to university and completed her degree. On graduation day, her family gathered in pride. Liana had achieved both academic success and true love. By marrying her, Sebastian didn't just gain a wife, he inherited a family full of warmth, turning a tragic medical mishap into a timeless love story. Feel free to leave a comment, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.